This meeting is being recorded.
Here comes Liz. And in the picture. All right. Here we are. We are on section 19 of I Am That by Shree Nisargadatta Maharaj.
And you're going to mute us.
Yes. Here we go. Everyone is muted. And again, please feel free to say anything at any time. Unmute first. Of course, if you're happy saying it on mute, that's fine too. All right, so we're in section 19 of Shree Nisargadatta's I Am That. Just trying to probe at the reality, just listening to the questions that they're asking. Today's got an interesting title. Here comes Mick. Today's title is Reality Lies in Objectivity. And so I like to try, and when I read their titles like that, I like to try and imagine, okay, if someone gave me that for a title of a lecture, what would I say? Where would that go? And so this idea, reality lies in objectivity. I think objectivity means pure non-identity, pure not associating yourself with body or with mind or with thought, with circumstance, with happenings, but to be purely the witness, purely present. Only then can you see, because you have no vested interest in one thing over another. You see the entirety in it all. And I imagine that's linked somehow to that notion of no good and evil. With the resolution of duality lies in that non-identity also, to observe the whole dispassionately, knowing its perfection, knowing its nature, and therefore not feeling any need for change or manipulation or fixing at all. But let's see what he says, where he's going to go with this. The questioner: I am a painter, and I earn by painting pictures. Has it any value from the spiritual point of view? Maharaj, when you paint, what do you think about? There it is, right to the heart of the matter. When you paint, what is it that you think about? Right? Maharaj, the questioner says, well, when I paint, there is only the painting and myself. Maharaj, and what are you doing there? Questioner, I paint. Maharaj, no, you don't. You see painting going on. You are watching only. All else happens. All right, there's a couple of really cool things in here that are very important in this world. And that is, one, it's not what you're doing in your life that's important. It's how you're doing it. Right? So a person can find, the reason that this is important is because for a very large segment of my life, I was driven towards success. I went and got my computer science degree and went and got my job. And in my job, I was constantly focusing on my performance and trying to, meet the approval of the people who were in charge of my salary and of my employment, and constantly trying to better myself for my own advantage, it seemed like a purpose in and of itself. I really didn't analyze much about it. And see, that's an ego-driven life, a life that requires a constant driving or a constant pushing or a constant, a constant effort. It's not a divine life. It's not a free life. It's a slave's life, beholden to whatever your masters are that are outside of yourself. And so when you're analyzing your life, don't use the markers of the world, like how much money am I making, how much property do I own, how proud of my kids am I, how am I turning gray, Do I have too many wrinkles? Am I still beautiful and in shape? And all of these worldly markers of life, those are not the important things. Those are the well, rat poison comes to mind, but those are the little breadcrumbs that lead us into the forest. That are that are causing us to meet the witch. I guess I'm tearing that story up to pieces, but it's really a question of, why am I doing anything that I do? The simpler that answer is for you, the better quality your life is going to be. If you say, well, why am I doing this? And the fewer number of steps you have to go through to get to love, the healthier you are as a human being. The ideal is for you to ask anything why am I doing this? And if you can't just say directly, oh, because I love this, this is an expression of love for me. The sooner you can say that, with the fewer steps in between, and the more true to that statement that you can be, that measures really how fulfilling your life is going to be, because your nature, as we know over and over and over again, is love divine and wisdom divine. And if you can stay in a space where you're using that nature to manifest a beauty, to manifest this life of yours, that's where you'll find fulfillment. You could be an unhoused person living on the sidewalk, which oddly enough is very close to the ideal. If you're a sadhu, if you're a wandering sadhu. And so, there's a certain lesson there. I remember, I've told that story. Remember Swami Rudratmananda, my traveling or my wandering monk who lived in that kutir in Rishikesh that I went and chanted with every day. And it was just his contentment with his life, just his absolute contentment and joy in his life, that ripped all of the furniture out from under me. I was amazed, because here was somebody who didn't play by any of the rules that I played by, that didn't obey any of the instructions that I had obeyed. He didn't go to college. He didn't own a house. He didn't own a car. He didn't, make good money. He couldn't afford vacations in Paris. He broke all the rules, because that was one of the first things I said to Philip after we left meeting him for the first time. I said, Philip, I just don't get it. I said, I have played by all the rules. I've done everything that everybody told me I should do in my life. And I have not had 1 second of the joy that man was experiencing while he was sitting in his mud house, chanting in some language. I don't even know what it was. I don't even know what he was chanting. I said, but I could see that he was winning at life in a way that I had not even begun to compete for. I didn't even understand the rules that he was living by. And this is what we're being confronted with here, the rules that brought him that immense amount of joy, sitting in a mud house, owning nothing, borrowing everything from a rich man that was taking care of him through the rich man's devotion. So this whole notion of understanding that it's the why you live your life, the why you get up in the morning. We should come up with some affirmation like that. I get up today because I love today, because I look forward to loving the people I'm going to encounter today. I look forward to the wisdom that's going to manifest today. To reorient ourselves. We don't get up because, let's say, I have to go grocery shopping. I have to stop by the bank. I have to go to the florist and get more plant food. These become our reasons for living, and then we wonder why we're not fulfilled. Going to the post office somehow just isn't enough. So this whole notion, while you're living, what are you thinking about? He's asking. He says, well, when I paint, there's only the painting of myself. Well, what are you doing there? I paint. No, you don't. Right? He's catching it right at the root. No, you're not the doer. So you're not painting. So what are you doing? You're watching. You're watching only. Everything else is happening. See, this is how we break identity. When we don't see the thought as ours, then we don't get controlled by the thought. But if we see the thought as being ours or have an interest in it, then we become controlled by it, and it adds another thought to it and another thought. And soon those thoughts line up to that state of mind that produces an action. And that action makes us think that we're the doer, not because we did it. We didn't do it. The series of thinking did it. But it was our identity with that series of thinking that made us think we did it. But we were always the one watching the thinking. We were the one only watching. That's our only relationship with it. And our identity with thoughts leads to our identity with action, right? And then our identity with action leads to our identity with the results of action. And our identity with the results of action bring us into a world of tumult, of up and down, of craziness. In an ever-changing sea, we're trying to find balance and just are not able to do it. So I paint. No, you don't. You see the painting going on. You are watching only. All else happens. Questioner, the picture is painting itself? Or is there some deeper me or some God who is painting? Maharaj, consciousness itself is the greatest painter. The entire world is a picture. Oof, that got big quick. So we've gone from a painting to the whole world, which is exactly, oh my God, there's some beautiful things in there. I just felt a wonderful inspiration in there. This whole notion, this life, this whole world, your life in particular, your section of the canvas, since we are identified somehow with our mind and thoughts and actions, is your art. Your life is your art. And when you sit there and create your art, you want it to be beautiful. You want it to be authentic and sincere. You want it to be of benefit. You want it to be something pleasing and helpful. And so our life, we should approach our life very much in that same way. We're all an artist in that degree, in that sense. And so our consciousness, consciousness is our awareness with objects in it. So our awareness, which is our true self, the watcher, the witness, has identified somewhat with our thoughts and whatnot, and through that has put objects into its awareness. And so that creates consciousness. And consciousness is the artist, is the painter of world, the painter of sense, the painter of thought, the painter of experience. And so we can watch this happen. We can become aware of it happening. And, in that, we find through that lack of attachment, there's a lack of danger in that sense. So he says, consciousness itself is the greatest painter. The entire world is a picture. Questioner, well, who painted the picture of the world? Maharaj, this is a good one. This is a twist on thinking. The painter is in the picture. That could take some unpacking. That's a fun one to think about. What does that mean? The painter is in the picture. There's no separate, there's no separateness. So the painter actually is the picture and more. That's not a singularity in there. The singularity is in the unity, in the harmony of the picture. But the painter has disguised himself by being the paint, being the brush, being the canvas, being the color, being the texture. The painter has hidden himself in the painter. Well, actually, he is the painting. There's not a separation there, which is really the experience of the artist, of a good artist, I think, painting, that there is a unity there. There is when you go into that zone where your movements aren't calculated, where you're just responding in the moment to whatever, to just listening and creating your art. And this is really how life is. Don't determine things calculatingly ahead of time. Just do and be present and watch. See where it goes. Questioner, the picture is in the mind of the painter, and the painter is in the picture, which is in the mind of the painter, who is in the picture. Is not this infinity of states and dimensions absurd? The moment we talk of picture in the mind, which itself is in the picture, we come to an endless succession of witnesses. The higher witness witnessing the lower. It is like standing between two mirrors and wondering at the crowd. Indeed. Quite right, Maharaj says. Yes, that's exactly what it's like. That's exactly what it's like. You alone and the double mirror are there. Between the two, your forms and names are numberless. Isn't that great? I mean, the questioner posits that as an absurdity, you know. Like, certainly it's just like you're standing in the dressing room mirrors, just infinite use. And Maharaj is saying, exactly, you've got it. The guy's like, oh God, what do I have? I don't even know I have it. You know, which is interesting because he should have it because he was the one that said it. But you see, his process happened here, right? And that's why there's no satisfaction in it. That's why there's no understanding in it, because it was just an unfolding of a series of philosophical ideals. They weren't coming from a knowledge of inspiration, a knowledge of being inside. So it is, in fact, you that have become everything. Not this you. This is part of one of the things you've become. But the you is everywhere. You know, I had that experience, just to remind you of it. So forgive my personal stories, but they're the only way I know anything. But that one time I was sitting with Mother, my mind was in, oh my God, my mind was in one of those states, you know, just feeling lots of desire and just feeling weak and just feeling like, oh God, I can't do this. And so I went to my shrine and I just sat there and I did my thing. You know, I put my mind in my hand and I was looking at it. With Mother was there and I was like, look at that thing. Mother, look at that thing. That thing is a hot, slimy mess. I mean, it is just a mass of desires and, you know, bewilderment. I said, it's just insane, you know. And one of the things I told Mother in defensiveness, you know, about, because I felt some attachment. That's my mind, right? And so I told Mother, I was like, well, you know, Ma, if this was your mind, you would be in the same dilemma that I'm feeling right now. And I just remember that sensation inside of Mother going, exactly. You see, you, that which you think is you, is me with your mind. Me with that mind is you. There is no you in that equation. You're just an owner. You're just one who has declared ownership without any right to ownership. I am living your life, and I'm living your life through that mind. There's no you there. And I just sat there with that thinking, okay, I don't know what to do with that. I could see the truth of it, right? But how do you move out? How do you move an imaginary building or an imaginary squatter? How do you move an imaginary squatter out of your apartment, right? And this is magical in a way, because that's exactly what Sri Ramakrishna was saying when he said, if you're asleep, it's very easy to wake up a person who's sleeping. He says, but to try and wake somebody up who's pretending to sleep, oh, that's very difficult indeed. You know, and so this is the thing, because we're approaching spiritual life as if something has to be done, right? That's the pretending part. It's like this is the reality, right? This is what is real. We don't have to do anything to make it real. We have to stop calling it unreal, or stop thinking that it's not real, or stop denying its reality, right? The fact that Mother, that this here is actually Mother looking through this mind, is a fact. I have to stop pretending that it's otherwise. I don't have to do anything. I have to stop pretending. I have to stop pretending that I'm asleep. Because why? Because when we have that sense of separateness, that very first flick of the idea that this is me and not the mother, causes all kinds of insecurity, causes a lot of fear. It causes a panic, actually, in all of us. I think our first, it's like like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The first thought that came to us when we became our own person was a panic of fear. Like, oh my God, where am I? What am I? What do I have to do? Where am I going? Who's going to feed me? It's getting cold. Oh my God, where's my house? Just a panic of what do I do as an individual? And so letting go is a big part of it. Letting go is all of it, actually. Surrender is all of it. The surrender of yourself, the surrender of you as owner. Let your life be mothers. Let your life be mothers. At first, that means that when you go out and act, don't act from your desire or your will or your calculation. Do what mother would do. And at first, it might be a lot of acting. But in time, you'll come to realize that actually you're doing what your highest nature would do, and not something separate from you. It's not the ogre of mother in the sky wanting to exert her will over yours. It's the fact that there's no you with a will. So let go of that notion and act from what mother would do until you become comfortable with the presence of mother in you. And you know what mother does. You watch what mother does as the mind purifies. So quite right, you alone and the double mirror are there. Between the two, your forms and names are numberless. And this is where love comes from. Knowing yourself in all things is what gives birth to love. Knowing that you are everything and learning to see it that way, learning to treat it that way, learning to approach it that way. And then once that learning becomes knowing, once you've had enough experience understanding that, wow, that is the source of love, and that is the source of bliss, that is the source of joy and a fulfillment of life. Questioner says, well, how do you look at the world? Maharaj, I see a painter painting a picture. The picture I call the world. The painter I call God. See, there we go. I have to highlight this one just a little bit, because here we have an Advaitin saying that he calls the painter God. Very good. I love that. Okay. So the picture I call the world, the painter I call God. I am neither. I do not create, nor am I created. I contain all. Nothing contains me. There's a good meditation there. So I see a painter painting a picture. So he's the observer. He sees this world being painted. He's the witness. The picture I call the world. The painter I call God, that divine isness, that divine it, that other seeming. I am neither. So I'm not the world and I'm not the painter. That's knowing that you're not the doer. I do not create, nor am I created. Right? In your both in your local sense and in your ideal sense, that's true. That you are not created. You were never born, you'll never die. As a body self, as a body mind self, as a ego self, you weren't created because you don't exist. There's not a reality there. You're an idea, right? And so you as your personality are just an idea. Nothing was created, just like the house in your dream last night. You built it, you sweat over it, but when you woke up, there was nothing there. So nothing was built, even though you had the experience of building a dream. So here in this, it's like we know that we are neither, that we are building in a dream, and that there's a sleeper, self, who is the container of the whole. But Maharaj here doesn't have that interim step because he knows he's not the dreamed at all. He knows that he is the sleeper, right? The container of the dream. And the dream is everything to him at that point. I contain all, and nothing contains me. He also describes himself as a place where things happen, which I find fascinating. So you are just a place where things happen. Questioner, when I see a tree, a face, a sunset, the picture is perfect. When I close my eyes, the image in my mind is faint and hazy. If it is my mind that projects the picture, why need I open my eyes to see a lovely flower? And with eyes closed, I see it vaguely. Now, this is interesting. This is interesting because he still believes in his need for his eyes. He doesn't realize that his eyes are as much a part of the painting as the painting itself, right? So the eyes that he's opening are just another aspect of the painting. Maharaj says, it is because your outer eyes are better than your inner eyes. Yeah, because we've used our outer eyes ad infinitum. We're using them all the time. But our inner eye, we've ignored that so badly, that here we are in middle age and beyond, still trying to get a good hours of meditation because we're so unpracticed in the use of our inner eye, our inner sight, right? Because think about it, it's your inner eye that sees your dream, right? It's your inner eye that sees the whole world. And so why can't he see clearly when his eyes are closed? Because he hasn't yet realized that he's the one who paints his own dreams, right? He hasn't realized that inner eye, hasn't been able to let go of that outer eye, that attachment to the outer eye that sees the world that we imagine to be real. Because your outer eyes are better than your inner eyes. Your mind is all turned outward. That's where all of our attention and effort is going, out through the senses. As you learn to watch your mental world, okay, so that's where we're at. That's the process. We're watching our mental world, turning our eyes inward. Most of the time, we've been accustomed to watching the outer world and making our changes and thoughts about it. But our task as seekers is to pay more attention to the silence between sound, to the space between objects, than what we pay to the sound and the objects, right? We're trying to go for the inner world. We're trying to see what the mind did to get where it got. We're trying to see the process of thought that led to the identity and the ideals of our personality, of our egoism. We're trying to look at the seed. Where is all of this coming from inside? And we're trying to feel, to know, to intuit the nature of that seed by watching what it creates, by watching what it imagines and builds. As you learn to watch your mental world, you will find it even more colorful and more perfect than what the body can provide. Indeed. And that we just won't understand until it happens. That's that whole notion that, if you have a vision, something that doesn't come in through the senses, doesn't come in through mind, but seems to come in through some back door that circumvents the instruments of sense, that experience has a higher resolution, as it were. It's more real than real. It's what Thakur was saying, when Vivekananda asked him if he has seen God. He says, yes, I have seen God. And I see him now even more clearly than I see you. Right? So this is the reality of the inner world. You see, Thakur could see more clearly than what the senses could provide. And that's why someone who's had these visions are changed for the rest of their life, because they cannot forget the clarity, the resolution, the more real than real element of that experience, of that non-experience, just that witness of this. So he says, as you learn to watch your mental world, you will find it even more colorful and more perfect than what the body can provide. Of course, you will need some training, but why argue? You imagine that the picture must come from the painter who actually painted it. All the time you look for origins and causes. Causality is in the mind only. Memory gives the illusion of continuity, and repetitiveness creates the idea of causality. When things repeatedly happen together, we tend to see a causal link between them. It creates a mental habit, but the habit is not a necessity. Oh my gosh, everything is right here. You can throw out the rest of the book. If you can get this one paragraph, you have everything right here. You don't need to study anymore. All you need to do now is sit and think about it. And well, that's absolutely wrong. Sit and watch. Sit and watch about it. There you go. Go inside and watch about it. Don't think. Thinking's not necessarily. It'll happen, but just watch the thinking. Don't worry about it. Don't pay too much attention to it. Pay attention to that which is watching the thought constantly. So let's take this again, just kind of slowly. We'll probably repeat here, but since at least, I don't know, maybe somebody got it and somebody just fell out of their chair in realization, and I just haven't seen them yet. But, that's the thing, if we were all perfect students, like Vedanta says, I would have read this paragraph and I would have looked up to a bunch of 15 empty screens because everybody had fallen out of the chair. And we're sitting there in bliss, in ecstatic bliss. So let's try it again. All right. It is because your outer eyes are better than your inner eyes. Your mind is all turned outward. This is your fundamental problem. This sentence right here is why all religions are one, that religion is not plural, because this is the fundamental issue that every religion deals with. This is the fundamental point. Your mind is all turned outward. As you learn to watch your mental world, you will find it even more colorful and perfect than what the body can provide. You come to understand that what you need is within. It's not what's outside. The body, mind cannot provide you with anything beautiful enough, infinite enough, tasty enough, big enough, lasting enough to be satisfying to you. And yet you still continue to go out through your body mind to try and find it. He says, as you learn to watch your mental world, you will find it more beautiful, more colorful, more perfect than what the body can provide. That is when you start to come to stillness. That's when the mind begins to calm, because you're suddenly like, whoa, wait. There's something here, and it might be what I'm looking for. Of course, you will need some training, but why argue? You imagine that the picture must come from the painter who actually painted it. All the time you look for origins and causes. You see, watch your mind. This is one of the first things that you'll learn about yourself, that you're always applying origin and cause to everything. Cause and effect is how you think about the world and how you've defined your life, right? And so that's one of the first truths you're going to see by watching your mind. You're going to see that causality belongs to the mind because one thought causes the next. And if you're identified with thinking, you have no choice but to live in the world of cause and effect, right? All the time you're looking for origins and causes, but causality is in the mind only. It's in the mind only. It doesn't exist outside of your mind. Causality is in the mind only. Memory gives the illusion of continuity, right? Because how do you determine if something's continuous? You check the previous memory and you check with what's going on right now. Yeah, it's the same. It's like, yep, I went to bed in this room last night. Yep, all this stuff was exactly where it is. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh, look, everything is still in the same way that it was when I fell asleep last night. Measure it by your continuity, you're determining continuity, which is doing what? It's giving you the illusion you're not still dreaming. You're not in the dream world, right? Because there's continuity in this world. So causality is in the mind only. Memory gives the illusion of continuity, and repetitiveness creates the idea of causality. So what you think is causality is just repetition. There's not a link there, and you know this because physicists always talk about probabilities. There are no absolutes in physics. I remember my physics teacher telling me this in one of my labs. And I looked at her with some incredibility. I was like, how can that be? I said, are you telling me that if I drop this ball over this bowl, that there exists the probability at some point that ball is not going to drop into that bowl? And she says, yes. There is some level of probability that ball will not fall straight down into that bowl. And you sit there and you think, wow, how's that possible? And yet it's true. Maybe a great wind will come through the room. Who knows? But there is some possibility that ball is not going to drop down. So causality is in the mind only. Memory gives the illusion of continuity. Repetitiveness creates the idea of causality. And when things repeatedly happen together, we tend to see a causal link between them. It creates a mental habit. All right? It creates what we call a fact, a habitual way of perceiving something. But the habit is not a necessity. It doesn't mean the habit's necessarily wrong. It's just not necessary. And it's actually harmful because you're going to build a life on a mental concept. And that mental concept, how stable can a mental concept be? How secure can a mental concept be? How much joy and peace can a mental concept provide? And so if you're building your life on mental concepts and counting on things that belong to the mind alone and not to the reality that you're living in, what's going to be the sum total of that? Insecurity, vapidness, non-existence, non-reality, let's say that way. Questioner, you've just said that the world is made by God. Okay. Maharaj, remember that language is an instrument of the mind. It is made by the mind. It is made for the mind. Once you admit a cause, then God is the ultimate cause and the world the effect. They are different, but they are not separate. Remember that language is an instrument of the mind. Why? Because language is linear, right? One word follows another. For one word to follow the other, there has to be linking between them, a continuity. There has to be a causality between them. There has to be a subject and an object and a verb for language, right? Subject, object, and verb, the three requirements that the mind must have to conceive. So language is purely of the mind, designed by the mind for the mind. And using language alone binds us to mind alone. We can't escape. That's why we're looking for silence. But not the silence of ignorance, the silence of absence. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the silence of attention, to see the silence between the words as much as we see the words, because that's how we know that we're paying attention to the witness and not to the content. When we're paying to the content, we don't see the silence between words, or we don't hear the silence between words, and we don't see the space between objects. You'll know that you're being the witness when you're seeing the space between objects with equal clarity as what you're seeing the objects, when you're hearing silence between words and between thought as much as you're seeing the content of the thought, then you can know that you've pulled your identity out of mind. Then you can know that you've broken the habit of identifying yourself with thinking, with thought, right? And when you see the space, or you hear the silence between words and you see the space between objects, then you will see the oneness of all things. You will see their non-separateness. You will see that it is because of emptiness that objects can exist. You'll see that because of silence, words can exist. But the silence is dominant and the space is dominant. The words, the sounds, and the objects are all temporary and come in and out. Only the space remains, only the silence remains constant, right? And gives birth to all of the content. All right, so remember that language is an instrument of the mind. So it's better to sit in silence and let, we could call it an intuition, we could call it just your own knowing. That all science is discovery. It's never invention. It's always discovery, because it's understanding and playing with the rules that have always existed. So the language is an instrument of the mind. It is made by the mind. It is for the mind. And once you admit a cause, then God is the ultimate cause. So if you're going to think about spiritual matters within the context of mind alone, then you're going to have that ultimate cause. And that ultimate cause is not going to be explainable. And so we're going to call it God, right? It's going to be that thing which we simply can't understand because it is the exit point of mind. Once you admit a cause, then God is the ultimate cause and the world the effect. They are different, but they are not separate. What a concept right there. That's one. That's going to eject you from mind just trying to figure that one out. How something can be different but not separate, right? How is something different but not separate? It's understanding it's understanding that everything in the universe contains the universe. Nothing in the universe can be what it is without everything else being what it is. That there is an interbeing is what the Buddhists call that. This interbeing, that when you're looking at the flower, in the flower you can see the earth. In the flower you can see the air. In the flower you can see the sunlight. In the flower you can see the rain. In the flower you can see the warmth, right? Because it took a dance of all of those things together for that flower to exist. When you look at a tree, the same thing. You don't just see a tree. When you see the tree, you're looking at it with ego, something separate and apart from the whole. But when you look at it intuitively with the inner silence, you look at that tree and you will see the air, and you will see the water, and you will see the soil, and you will see the sunlight. All of it implied in the moment that you're calling tree, right? All of it there, singular at one time. None of it separate, none of it disposable, none of it unnecessary. All of it equally present. And so when the soul sees the tree as such, the soul sees the universe. It does not see object separate and apart. Egoism is the disease that causes separateness. That's how we see things as different but not separate. We know their nature. And this moment is the same way. This moment is just like that flower. You experience this moment, and yet it is the entirety of the past that was necessary for this moment that is indicated in this moment. And the entirety of the future will be projected out of this moment. So you see, this moment contains both the entire past and the entire future. So being present is to know both. right? Is to see this wholeness. You can't see separateness. You can't see the isolation of ego anymore. Questioner, well, people talk of seeing God. Indeed, they do. Maharaj, when you see the world, you see God. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. When you see the world, you see God. Nothing more apparent than that. And yet, how many people don't believe in God? Even though they're staring at him, her, that in the face. You know? Why is it we don't see the world? Because we don't see the world. We see objects. We see multiplicities of separateness. Right? When you see the world, you see God. There is no seeing God apart from the world. Beyond the world, to see God is to be God. The light by which you see the world, which God is in the tiny little spark, I am, apparently so small, yet the first and the last in every act of knowing and loving. Wow. When you see the world, you see God. Okay, when you see the world, you see God. So, just looking around the room at you right now, hold that truth and just look around and see if a sense of intimacy doesn't come over you. See if a feeling of life doesn't come over you. Just walk around and just look around the simple things in your room and see God. There is no seeing God apart from the world. Beyond the world, to see God is to be God. Because if you go beyond the world, then you're going beyond active mind. You're going beyond thought, because thought is creating the world. Right? An active mind is containing that thought. Silent mind is containing active mind, that unchanging absolute. The light by which you see the world, which is God, is the tiny little spark I am. Okay. The light by which you see the world, I am. That is what is your light. And you're like, well, what about all the other whatevers? You can really see the direct truth of this when you think about your dream again last night. In your dream last night, you could see. How could you see? The sun is not in there. The sun wasn't in your bed with you last night. There wasn't a hole in your mind that the nightlight was shining through to illuminate your dream. What illuminated your dream last night? What allowed you to see in your dream last night? It is the same thing that's allowing you to see right now, although you will blame this on the sun. In your dream, you might have blamed it on the sun as well. But there was no sun in your dream. There was only the idea of a sun. And there is no sun outside your window now. There's only the idea of the sun. That which illumines the world is consciousness. It is the divine. It is I am, which is the name of God and the seed of yourself. There is no seeing God apart from the world. Beyond the world, to see God is to be God. The light by which you see the world, which is God in the tiny little spark, I am, apparently so small, yet the first and the last in every act of knowing and loving. It is the I am that manifests. It is the I am that manifests. Must I see the world to see God? Maharaj, how else? No world, no God. Right? or no world, only God would probably be equally true. How else? No world, no God. Questioner, well, what remains? Maharaj, you remain as pure being, pure isness. That's where we find our unity. Your pure being and my pure being are one and the same. They are not different. They are not separate. We are that. That one seed, I am, has become every one of us. And when we experience it, we are experiencing the one. It is not different in us. It's not different until that light goes through this prism of our body-mind. And when it goes through this prism of our body-mind, I am, which is the source of light, or which is light, comes through the prism of body-mind and comes out as Swami C, as Tunga and Jan and Salil. And when viewed from this side out, we see the difference. We see object, we see separateness, we see change. But if we turn inward and look back at the seed I am, we see the sameness in each one of us. It is the what does he say there? It is the first and the last in every act of knowing and loving. Right? And it then becomes the very source of loving. When that I am is recognized in each other, when we see that first in each other, because we're seeing it primarily in ourselves, which then means that we see it primarily first in others, then we see sameness, we see oneness. And when we act on that oneness, we see love, we see compassion, right? And then we know more clearly that we are looking at God, and the world falls into its proper wavelength, and the mystery begins to dissolve, and we see this oneness, and we lose any impetus to change it, to want a particular of it, to dislike an aspect of it. That all begins to fade away, and we live in a new space. You remain as pure being, and what becomes of the world and of God? Maharaj, pure being, objecta, the container of everything. That's what remains. Is it the same as the great expanse, the Paramakash? Maharaj, you may call it so. Words do not matter, for they do not reach it. They turn back in utter negation. The words can't reach it. What is that it? The I am. You. These words dance in front of you. That's why you are eternally the witness, because the words are unreal. The words are constantly changing. They cannot touch you. You cannot be wedded. You cannot be burned. You cannot die. You cannot be born. There's a gulf between you and anything that could ever harm you or hurt you. You are eternally safe. You are that. How can I see the world as God? What does it mean to see the